so many people have stayed around to see this very, very exciting panel. And I have to say, it's been a fantastic day, hasn't it? I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic. We started this morning with a great panel on China. I don't know how many of you saw it this morning. It was all about growth in China and the Chinese market. And one of the things that struck me about that panel was the comment from Alibaba. 80% of e-commerce transactions in China are now actually transacted on a mobile phone. And these two gentlemen here on the panel are all about the mobile phone. They're trying to take the bank 100% completely onto the mobile phone. And just to give you a really interesting stat from my personal life, when I opened a bank account 15 years ago in Germany, I had to go to the bank, I had to book an appointment with my bank manager, and I had to open an account. It took me about 3 hours if you include the traveling time. When I moved to London in 2011, the same process actually took 5 weeks. N26 promises that on their app it happens in 8 minutes, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And the first question to you, Valentin, how do you really see your organization? Are you a fintech? Are you a bank? Are you a platform? What are you?
So I think we've definitely started out as a fintech company, I would say as a startup. But today we have our own banking license. We are regulated by the European Central Bank in Germany in the end. So we are, I think, a combination of a digital organization with all the freedom, or not the freedom, of a regulated entity. In the end, I think this is our advantage. So we can take decisions quickly within the organization. We have the regulation, the license that we need to drive innovation in retail banking.
And part of that sort of innovation that you're talking about really is all about user experience, isn't it? I mean, the heart of the innovation you're trying to drive on the mobile phone is how to make the user experience as slick as possible, how to take friction out of the process. Jonas, I mean, how key, how do you do that in your organization?
Well, I think there's, to a certain extent, a benefit in being a company that starts with 0 customers, which is not where most of the big banks' sort of innovation projects start, right? In the UK, you have 4 big banks. They each have over 10 million customers. For us, if we didn't start from the user experience, we would simply remain a company with 0 customers. So the way we design our app is to make a very, very bare bones app in the very beginning. Before we even had a banking license, we made the first Bank of Tom, which is my co-founder, and we each gave him 100 quid, and then we used it to sort of have a closed-loop money system. And then more and more people wanted in, and every time somebody said, there's some friction here, or this is not good, we just fixed it. And in the end, you just end up with a product that has a really good user experience. And whenever your growth stalls, it probably means you have to change something, make something easier for a new demographic as you're sort of slowly crossing the chasm into the mainstream.
Valentin, why do you think that sort of traditional banks struggle with this concept of putting the user first and creating that great user experience in the way I guess you also similarly do it to the way Monzo do?
So I think it's different things that come together in the financial industry. I think the first thing is that traditionally you had a high interest surrounding, so banks were earning lots of money just by putting money to the central bank or somewhere else, so it wasn't working on their own. So I think they lost a lot of income streams. On the other hand, that led to like a non-customer focus. Yeah, they were earning a lot of money, they didn't need to focus, there wasn't a lot of competition, so that's what it was. The second thing is, I think the user experience and what people want to have from banks, so the user journey has completely changed over the last 10 years. I think it's comparable to the travel industry. Today, you do banking on mobile. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you had to call your bank or go there physically. So I think the user journey changed and kind of the interest surrounding puts banks under pressure. On the other hand, they're highly regulated and they're huge organizations. So they're 100,000 employees sometimes. So I think it's a lot of challenges that you know from a lot of industries coming together in the financial industry especially. And I think that's in the end leading to kind of a lack of focus, a lot of challenges that these big players have to face. And that's again leading to maybe sometimes forgetting the customers and forgetting that actually I think key to the bank of the future is technology and serving the customers.
You two are entering the financial industry at a very interesting time because I think sort of trust in banks has probably never been, or hardly been as low as it is today, and post sort of the financial crisis. And trust is I guess, one of the key sort of most important forms of capital that a bank can have. Now, previously, I guess, in the old world, you would have, the way a bank would have built trust is to have large marble columns in its institution, and you had a bank manager, and you had a relationship with that bank manager, and if you walked past the bank and the bank manager was standing on the roof, then you probably got a little bit worried. But I guess, how do you build trust on a mobile phone? If the only sort of point of contact is a screen, how can you? What are sort of the marble pillars of the digital age?
Yeah, so that is indeed literally that question. What are the marble pillars? What's the giant safe door of Monzo? Is something we discuss very, very often. And to us, the answer is sort of a part just customer service. So that's actually a very simple answer. We have responsibility for people's money, people's livelihoods. We don't have retail branches. I can understand people get anxious about that. They say, where do I go and really shout and yell if I'm in trouble financially or I don't have access to my money? And for us, the answer is 24/7 instant customer service, on instant message, on the phone, however the customer wants it. So that's one thing we massively invest in, perhaps over-invest in, to just put a very high bar. And the other is our head of design always says production values, which initially I didn't really understand, but it's basically everything the user does has the opportunity to build a little bit more trust. Giving them the right information at the right time, even little animations, just showing that there's some power behind it, there's some weight. Like a really high production value app is part of our marble pillars.
But it's not just the app itself, isn't it? I mean, you at Monzo place a huge amount of value on transparency, don't you?
Yeah. So that is one thing that is somewhat unusual, that just sort of started in the beginning. You can read our financial results on the internet. Our product roadmap is public. We show you our features whilst they're in pre-release. We let you trial them. And indeed, that does instill trust. However, I would say that is not particularly scalable in the sense that not many people spend their sort of weekends reading the community forum of a bank, right? That works for the first 50,000 or 100,000 really, really enthusiastic people, but you can't get 10 million people to do that and buy in that way.
You mentioned a very interesting point there, which is a key word, which is scale. I guess, if for the sort of traditional banks, the sort of key limiting factor really, or key challenge is overcoming their legacy systems. I guess the challenge for a startup like you two is to get that scale. And of course, you both have had your own challenges in reaching that scale. I think there's a significant part of Monzo's customer portfolio where the customer lifetime value probably isn't where you want it to be. I know N26 has had a similar challenge with that in the past, and you've had to make some tough choices. What for you are the key sort of challenges to get scale here in Europe?
So I think first of all, it's all about the product. So you have to launch a product that is great, that people admire, and that people want to join. Otherwise, I think the only way to grow a company today is viral growth is a very big part of growing your company and your customer base. And this is always driven by how good your product really is and how good the usage of the product is and how different it is from traditional products that exist. And we've just recently announced that we have more than 500,000 customers just in the only 2.5 years of existence. So we are growing, we are the fastest growing bank, I think, in Europe today. And I think this shows how different our product is from traditional banking products and how important virality is. And I think if you want to go, and I think that's a big challenge, if you want to go from 500,000 customers, I think you need to go to 5 million in Europe to be to be a player on the market that is sustainable. And I think the two things that we do is focus on product, and the other thing is, and that has changed through regulation, that you can actually do banking all over Europe. So you don't need to focus on one country specifically, but we have a European banking license that is valid in all countries, as it's valid in Austria, as in Germany, where we're regulated, as in the UK. That's obviously especially important in banking, because in banking, your product can scale without having to pay too much attention to scaling your team. So today, it doesn't matter if we get 2,000 new signups a day, or we get like 20,000. I think it's kind of the same magnitude. The only thing that you have to scale is customer service. Yeah. And I think that's fundamentally changing the game. Yeah. Because if you look at the banking industry today, it's very fragmented. I mean, you have even banks that are just serving one country, are not just one country, but one city. And I think this is not something that's sustainable. If you look at the cost base, and in the end, very simple. I mean, can you afford the best iOS developer in the world if you're just producing an app that just works in Berlin? I'm not sure. Maybe it's better you have like 20 cities like Paris, Berlin, and Vienna, and then maybe you can pay him a higher salary, and then maybe he will join your company. I mean, there's a lot of factors to joining your company, obviously, but this is just one example.
You mentioned customer service, which I think is very interesting, because I think my sense is, you guys have added, you started with a credit card, you then added the current account, you're now adding sort of more products, you've added some really interesting insurance products as well to that portfolio, so you're building out your product depth. How far can you build out that product depth? And are there limits to the mobile experience that you can't overcome, where you get to a point where you actually say, no, this is a product where you need to speak to a person?
Yeah. So I think, in general, I think there's one mystery that people always think when they go into the bank branch, they get high-quality advice. And I think this is actually fundamentally wrong. And I think if you go to the bank branch on the corner, then the advice is just as bullshit. I think, like, for everybody who at least visited a university at one point or thought a little bit about kind of banking, where he wants to invest. So in the end, the question is, how do you provide customer service or advice at a level that is affordable, depending on kind of the investment size? So, I mean, does it make sense to give people personal advice if they invest maybe 10,000 euros? I'm not sure. Yeah? If they invest 1,000 euros, maybe not. Yeah? If they invest 1 million, maybe a private banker makes sense at one point. But I think it's always that question of scale. If you think about all the business around robo-advising, or not even robo-advising, I would say, I mean, I'm not smarter than the market, so I would recommend to everyone to buy ETFs, yeah, that are maybe representing the market. So I think it's a philosophical question if you think you can outpace the market, or if you just want to trust, a scalable technology that maybe gives you a return without a lot of overhead. And I think if you reduce, kind of, if you're investing into a fund today, I mean, it's 3% money management fee there, then maybe it's a fund of fund, again 3%, and you have to earn all of this. So I think in the long run, to make it short, the only way to do good customer service and especially good advice is data and robo-advice and these things. And I think all these things, you're better off as a retail customer if you use them digitally than going to the bank branch, getting bad advice, and paying a lot of money for it.
Jonas, I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, but if there are any questions in the room, have a little think, and I'm going to come back in about 2 minutes' time and see whether there are any questions, and the panel have agreed to take questions from the audience, so be ready to raise your hand. Jonas, you're sort of following very much in the footsteps and the path that N26 are blazing. You've got the credit card now. You've got your banking license in April. So congratulations on that. What's sort of coming next? I guess you're preparing for the rollout of a current account. And what are the next steps? And are there things that you potentially would do differently to the way N26 have done things?
That's a good question. So what's coming now? We were talking about this earlier. Is exactly what N26 did pretty much 12 months ago, which is moving all of our customers over from this sort of third-party issued and supplied IT system and also e-money issuing license in the UK over to our own banking license and our own systems. So this is sort of the big Q3 project. I think for the future, it sounds like we have very similar ideas around what the banking model of the bank of the future could be like. The question for us is, what is the next market of expansion? It's one we're currently discussing a lot. So in Europe, as I'm sure you're very well aware, it's one market, but you do have sort of dozens of different languages, different cultures. In every country, you have maybe 1 or 2 other payment schemes that people use that, where they get a bit upset if you don't connect to that as well, maybe a corner store network for cash or something like that. So for us, the big question is it Europe or is it the US, basically, where everybody speaks the language that our customer support staff speaks? There's only one banking system, or maybe both, who knows?
Any questions from the audience at this point? No? Fine, well, I'll come back to you again in 5 minutes.
I think there was one question actually in the very back.
Oh, is there?
Yes.
If you've got a question, please stand up. So the question was around the role of changing technology and how that's going to affect your business model.
Blockchain.
Blockchain. How blockchain is going to impact your business model. Very good question.
I mean, that's a question you get every single time, and it's very vague. So the way I think of the blockchain is it's a distributed, decentralized database technology that sort of you can use for storing data. And I think for us that will come in most handy, like for many other banks, for actually squaring up with other financial organizations, with other banks. For in some countries there's experimental blockchain-based clearing houses, but sort of beyond that there's no immediate application, especially of people are asking us, are you going to add Bitcoin in the app or Ethereum or something like that? It's currently not on the program.
Is N26 going to add Bitcoin?
So I think Bitcoin for us is two kind of things where it can change things. One is on our backend systems, how do we book transactions and these things. The other thing is, I think we actively think about integrating a Bitcoin wallet into N26 where you can exchange between euros and Bitcoins easily. I mean, none of the banks in Europe is currently providing that, so I think that might be an opportunity. The other thing is, I think, especially in finance and retail banking, there are so many quick wins. It starts with opening an account where you can do it with us in 8 minutes, or you go and spend 2 hours at Sparkasse, or you get a credit where you normally have to do like at least 3 branch visits and spend a lot of time there. In the end, maybe you pay a higher interest rate and it took forever. With us, you can do it with, like I would say, 3 clicks and the money is paid out instantly. So I think when you focus on the real problems of people where you have a lot of impact, it's credit, it's investing, it's saving, it's insurance, where we recently added, and maybe a couple of more around that experience, I think that's where you can gain a lot of the trust of the customers, much more than maybe adding a Bitcoin wallet. But still, I mean, if you look at our target group, we don't have to serve 100% of the market. I mean, in Germany alone, you have more than 100 million current accounts. Yeah. So when we would get a couple of million customers in Germany, we would be very happy. So you have to think about what's your target group, what are they interested in. So it's not always that easy.
So you just mentioned your sort of your customer base and the target group. And one thing that would interest me is, are you just a millennial organization that just attracts millennials and you're sort of the bank for millennials, but actually the rest of society doesn't really care? Or what sort of experience do you have?
So I think normally what you see with digital products of any sort, normally people that have grown up and have been digital natives value a digital experience much more because they use digital products every day. So I think that's the same with our target group. The majority of our target, our customers, is between, I would say, 18 to 35. But I think you can look, for example, at WhatsApp. And I think 5 years is always my example. 5 years ago or 3 years ago, I was the only one in my family, maybe together with my brother, using WhatsApp. And today I get like 5 messages from my mother a day and 5 from my father. And he sends me videos and exploring all this stuff. So I think there has been there's a quick pickup throughout like older generations. So I don't think that normally the early adopters are the digital generation, but then it doesn't take 10 years for others to follow, but it takes maybe 2 or 3 years for people to follow. And I think the digital generation is an indicator for others to follow. And we see the same with our customer group that is getting older every day. Yeah?
Do you see the same in the UK? I mean, I have a friend, he's in his 60s, and he actually bought his son a Monzo card so that he would be able to sort of monitor what his son was spending. And we were sitting in a meeting, and he goes, "Oh, my son is in Ibiza, and I can just see that on the second evening he's blown through his entire amount of money that I sent him. I'm certainly not going to be sending him any more. So let's see how he goes on." I mean, do you see that a lot with Monzo? That kind of use case?
I mean that particular use case is, yeah, definitely we do see. But we also see a surprising number of people actually using it that aren't millennials. So one thing we track quite aggressively and care a lot about is that we do break out of this echo chamber. So the average age at the minute is maybe 28 or something like that on the platform, but that is already a lot older than it was last year, as is probably the case with N26. And actually a similar indicator for us, since we started sort of as a prepaid card with an API for tech nerds in London, is the gender ratio. Right now, people signing up is 50-50 men and women, which is completely different from how it was just a year and a half ago, when sort of everybody was given a Monzo card at a hackathon.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yes. The question was, what do you think of the business model of TLS, and can you include it in your business model?
So I think, as I mentioned before, I think in the end, an investment choice has to be taken by everyone, and we are just in the beginning of kind of producing and offering all these products. So we've been very much focused over the last year, where a year ago we had a retail account and a card, to kind of adding all these products from saving to credit to investment. I think the next step could be that we also adding investment products more spread out, so that we say, okay, maybe some people want to do a different kind of investing, and that could be something that we think about, but it's not on a roadmap for, I would say, the near-term future. I think another thing that I would like to add in general, when we discuss about the experience, what's our target group, I think what we're doing is much more than just, a front-end experience and a better app. I think it's a lot of things that come together. I think on one hand, it's obviously the better interface, and what we're setting for the better user experience. But on the other hand, I think you have to think about how can you build a bank that is sustainable, and how can you build that on a cost base that is sustainable and be transparent about cost to customers. And I think that's something that you can do, obviously, if you use a technology system that is not 40 years old, but it's new. And on the other hand, I think also the transparency that we're giving to customers, the ease of use that we're giving to customers, and then also in all the products that you use around the bank, the time saving that we give to customers. You don't even have to value the great experience. I mean, maybe you just want to save time. I think then also N26 is a great product for you.
I've got a question to the both of you, as in terms of where you see banking going in the future. We had a great, Alibaba this morning spoke about, online retailers now actually going into the offline world and sort of having their own stores. We've seen acquisitions, very interesting ones made by Amazon. Where do you see yourselves in 15 years' time? Are you going to be, opening shops on the high street anytime soon, or where do you see the future of banking?
I think in 15 years, hopefully, banking is a bit like WhatsApp. I think, you were talking about 8-minute sign-up. I think every single time money changes hands, I want to send money to another person in another country. That's an opportunity for them to sign up for an account like this immediately. And that is when you really grow, and everybody just has this counter where if I consume a product or service, my number goes down, their number goes up. You can do that very, very easily at a global scale with technology. And so somebody's going to have to work out how to get enough banking licenses or break down those barriers of regulation. And then I think everybody can download a bank, and everybody could hypothetically be using the same bank in the world, and no branches.
So I think when you think about the future of banking, I think one is obviously the brand question. I discussed it a lot about. But I think when you think about banking, I think banking is fundamentally changing in a way to people are companies that are the gatekeeper to your customer, that are good in user experience and digital experiences, as N26, for example, is. And then you have specific investors or insurance companies or traditional banks that have huge balance sheets and that have the better structure to underwrite credit risk, that maybe to give the right interest rate on savings, because they have maybe a leasing business on the other side. So what we see and how we view the future world, and that's what we have done at N26. So when you look at N26, most of the products that we're doing in credit, saving, or investment are done with partners. So you have a bank account with us, but once you want to invest 10,000 euros, we have integrated, for example, the 10 most attractive partners in Europe for a savings product, and you can choose between these banks, and with one click invest into kind of a bank that is based in Spain or also in Germany, for example, or in Austria, that pay higher interest. And then you can select the offer that's best for you. But everything happened through the N26 interface. And so I think that's where we see banking going in the future. I think we'll have specified institutions, maybe in a very niche area to maybe be able to pay a higher interest and then have a leasing business on the other hand. And we'll have people that maybe is an insurance that want to underwrite a huge amount of consumer credits. So I think there will be this split into these different things, and I think the bank of the future will be much lighter balance sheet and much less in terms of in terms of interest income, but much more fee income.
Our time is up, but one last question, just a yes/no answer. To sum up everything, does that mean that you're going to be more sort of a platform where other banks predominantly sort of can put their products in, or are you is the focus going to be to manufacture your own products in the future?
It's a very difficult question to answer with yes and no.
Yeah. Where's the focus going to be?
Yeah, I think it's going to be definitely more the platform approach. And I think that's...
Do you agree with the platform approach?
I think that's the current hypothesis, although it is easier in the short term for probably both of us to make straight revenues just from lending, which is the friction that we have.
We look forward to the platform future of banking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.